Hello, thank you very much for coming to our virtual presentation. I'm Dr. Chen Mo from the University of St. Joseph at Macau, and my co-author for this presentation is Ms. Lin Yunting from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. This study was conducted while I was working in Nanyang Technological University, and the topic was about comparing online learning experiences between university students with and without special educational needs, SEN, during COVID-19. According to the World Health Organization, coronavirus disease, COVID-19, is an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus. During the first half of 2020, with the exponential rise in COVID-19 infection rates, many universities turned to online learning and adopted the use of video conferencing tools and digital platforms as substitutes for traditional in-class face-to-face education. Online learning is defined as the student's learning experiences in synchronous or asynchronous environments made possible by technology. With online learning becoming a pandemic reality, it would be useful to gain insight into university students' experiences with online learning. Since there is limited documentation on the online learning experiences of university students with special educational needs, SEN, it remains unclear how well university students with SEN have been coping with this change. As such, this study aims to design an online survey to understand university students' experiences with online learning, with a focus on comparing the experiences reported by university students with SEN and those of typical development at Nanyang Technological University, NTU, in Singapore. For this study, we define university students with SEN as having one or more of the following conditions, including physical disabilities, sensory impairment, like hearing impairment or vision impairment, diagnosis related to social or behavioral difficulties, such as autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, or learning disabilities, like dyslexia. The rationale behind this definition was to be consistent with the conditions listed by NTU's Accessible Education Unit, which is an organization provide specialized support for students with SEN in the university. Specifically, this study seeks to investigate the following 7 research questions. Number 1, was there any significant difference in the proportion of online learning versus face-to-face learning experienced in university before and after the COVID-19 outbreak for the 2 groups of students? Number 2, did the overall experiences with online learning differ between university students with SEN and those of typical development before and after the COVID-19 outbreak? Number 3, what were the most common online learning formats experienced by each group respectively? Number 4, what was the device that was most often used for online learning for each group respectively? Number 5, what technical accommodations were reported by each group respectively? Number 6, what was the preferred online learning software or platform reported by each group respectively? Number 7, what were the key advantages and challenges reported by each group respectively? Ethical approval was obtained from the university prior to the implementation of the study. Participants' consent was obtained before their participation in the online survey. A total of 50 typically developing students and 31 students with SEN participated in the study. They were all full-time NTU undergraduates. The study adopted a survey design, and data collection was conducted via an online survey delivered by Qualtrics. A convenience sampling approach was utilized. The survey consisted of 17 items. There were 2 screening items about whether they were full time until undergraduate and if they had any diagnosed SEN. And then there were 10 content-related questions. Then there were 5 demographics-related questions, like year of study, age, gender, their school, and ethnicity, followed by 10 content-related items, such as the proportion of online learning versus traditional face-to-face learning they had experienced in the university, as well as their rating of their overall online learning experiences in the university before and after the COVID-19 outbreak, etc. A quota of 50 participants was set up for each group of students in quadrics. Based on their responses to the screening item regarding whether they had SEN, they were assigned to the respective group by the quota set in quadrics. This helped us to track the number of participants for each group, and participants were automatically redirected to the end of the survey after each quota was filled. The whole survey took no longer than 15 minutes to complete, and each participant was suggested to complete the survey only once at their own time and convenience. Descriptive analysis was conducted for all items. T-tests and chi-square tests were conducted as appropriate. So a total of 81 participants took part in the survey, including 50 typically developing students and 31 SEN students. Chi-square tests found no significant difference in terms of their gender. Most of the participants were aged from 20 to 25 years old, with a mean age of 22 years old for both groups, with no significant difference. For both groups, most of the participants were Chinese, with no Malay participants. Participants in the typically developing group were roughly equally distributed across their years of study, while most participants in the ASEAN group were Year 1 or Year 2 students. For the ASEAN group, the breakdowns of the diagnoses were ADHD, 12, 3 ASD, 1 behavioral issues, 4 with dyslexia, 1 with dyspraxia, and 7 with hearing impairment, 2 with physical impairment, and 1 with visual impairment. So in terms of their experiences of online learning before and after the COVID-19, we found no significant difference between these two groups in terms of the proportion of online learning versus traditional face-to-face learning before the COVID-19, as well as after the COVID-19. There was a statistically significant large difference in terms of the proportion of online learning versus traditional face-to-face learning experienced in university before and after the COVID-19 outbreak for both groups, which is quite understandable. On a 100-point rating scale, before the outbreak, both groups' experience with online learning were moderately positive, with an average rating of 62.8 by the typically developing group and an average rating of 57 by the ASEAN group, with no significant difference. After the outbreak, the average rating of online learning experiences decreased to 57.9 for the typically developing group. However, it rose to 58.5 for the ASEAN group, still moderately positive for both groups, and there was no significant difference between the two groups. Notably, there was no significant difference in the overall experiences with online learning in university before and after the COVID-19 outbreak for both groups. In terms of the formats of online learning or types of online learning the students have experienced in the university, it was found that learning activity management system (LAMS), pre-recorded lectures, online finals or quizzes, live lectures, online assignments, and online tutorials were endorsed most frequently by both groups, with a range from about 80 to 90% for both groups. Another similar point between the two groups was that the the laptop or desktop was the primary device used for online learning reported by both groups, which is also quite understandable. But we also need to note that still a very small percentage of students from the two groups reported they use tablet or iPad as the primary type of device for online learning in university. As for the use of technical accommodation during online learning, they were more likely to be utilized by the ASEAN group, mainly through subtitles, captions, and larger font size. Other technical accommodations reported by the ASEAN group were transcripts, headphones, speakers, and video speed changers. When asked to rank their preferred online learning software or platform among different platforms, Zoom was the preferred online learning software reported by both groups. When asked to rank the key advantages of online learning, accessibility was the top advantage of online learning endorsed by typically developing students, followed by flexibility and personalized learning experience. For students with ASEAN, the top advantage of online learning endorsed was flexibility, followed by accessibility and personalized learning experience. The lower social interaction was the top challenge encountered for both groups of students. Following this was increased distraction or less engagement and difficulty in asking questions for both groups during online learning. In addition, there was no significant differences in the ratings of each challenge, the ratings of frequency of encountering each challenge between the two groups. For typically developing students, other challenges included comprehension issue and worsening eyesight. For students with ASEAN, other challenges were anxiety, struggling to keep up with the content, burnout, difficulty in understanding the content, and inferior teaching quality. So to sum up, this study was a preliminary endeavor to investigate the online learning experiences of typically developing university students and university students with ASEAN in one university in Singapore. With the data collected from this study, we found no significant difference between the two groups in terms of their ratings of online learning experiences before the COVID-19 outbreak as well as after the outbreak. They both reported a significant increase in the proportion of online learning after the COVID-19 outbreak compared to that before the outbreak. In other words, although the proportion of online learning versus traditional face-to-face learning experienced in university has increased for both groups, their overall ratings for their online learning experiences did not change drastically after the COVID-19 outbreak compared to that before the outbreak. Some reasons for this could be due to the familiarity of online learning as a learning mode and how online learning enabled them to continue learning and achieve their academic goals even during the height of the unprecedented pandemic. During the COVID-19 outbreak, online learning has become even more prominent, such that it has become a panacea as suggested in a descriptive study by Dawan in 2020. In terms of more specific experiences about online learning, Learning Activity Management System, LAMS, pre-recorded lectures, and many other formats were the most common online learning formats experienced by both groups. This was consistent with the report by Lee and Lalani in 2020 that many universities relied on video conferencing tools and platforms so that education could remain undisrupted during the pandemic. As for the most often used device for online learning for both groups, it was laptop or desktop. Zoom was the preferred online learning software for both groups. Additionally, the ASEAN group was more likely to use technical accommodations during online learning. This highlights the importance of technical accommodations for this group, which could influence their online learning experiences. Finally, accessibility was the top advantage of online learning for typically developing students, while for students with SEN, it was flexibility. One possibility could be due to the time flexibility being offered by online learning, where students with SEN were able to learn at a comfortable pace to suit their learning needs. The personalized learning experience has the least number of students endorsing it as the top advantage of online learning. It might be due to the difficulties encountered when designing online learning materials to cater to a wide range of needs and preferences. As such, this might be a potential area that is lacking in online learning. Lower social interaction was the top challenge encountered for both groups of students. These advantages and challenges faced by our participants were consistent with those stated in many other previous studies. While our study seeks to address the gaps in previous studies conducted on online learning by expanding the scope to the online learning experiences of university students with SEN, our sample size for the SEN group was limited. Therefore, future studies could include a larger, more diverse sample that is representative of different ethnicities, schools, and years of study in university. In addition, it is possible to collect the survey data at different periods or time points to investigate the changes in the students' online learning experiences across time. All of these can provide insights into the online learning experiences of the two groups of students, especially students with SEN, and ensure their learning needs are adequately addressed even during online learning. Finally, qualitative investigations along this topic may help reveal more in-depth views from the group of students with SEN. Thank you very much for your listening, and please do not hesitate to reach out to me should you have any questions about this study, or maybe if you would like to have more potential collaboration in the future. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.